Good. Okay, in a few seconds we're on. In a minute they'll tell you what show is coming on. Good, good.
Where's the camera? Where should my eyes be
Good.
focused? Over. Should I be focused on the camera?
See the conversation.
Where does she look at? At you, at the camera? Josh, where she looks?
She looks, this is her camera.
Okay.
This is her camera. Hey. Oh, wait, no. Okay. There's something wrong. They're playing the wrong show. But anyway, that's okay. Okay. Hello. Welcome to Conversation. And tonight we have Ayala Shimron, a great motivational speaker. And she is really outstanding. I looked up on the screen and I didn't quite see what we wanted to play, but that's all right. This is going to play today when you're watching it. And Ayala is my favorite motivational speaker. She seems to cover everything that is important to me and my life and my future and my present. Ayala Shimron, say hello to New York City.
Hello, New York City.
So
it's a pleasure to be here today, speaking with all of you and being able to share a piece of my life, a little bit into what I do on a personal level, on an everyday level, individual level, as well as massive group level. So I look forward to sharing it with all of you.
Ayala, when you speak to an audience, you're speaking to many people, and I know that you have to really be you have to organize what you're going to say very carefully, because it's got to sound right to everybody in the audience. So how do you manage that?
Well, what I tend to do is I will try to find out which demographic, who my audience is ahead of time. I know that if I'm speaking, for example, my last motivational speech that I gave was to a group of approximately 400 high school students. So of course I would do my research in advance, and I would very strategically insert certain names that I know would relate to the specific audience whom I'm speaking to. For example, I would insert an example by Michael Jordan and how he achieved his goals. And I realized that when I insert people that the audience can relate to, it's much easier to get the crowd involved and feel like they're a part of what I'm saying, and they can relate much more easily that way as well.
Uh-huh. And then I'm an older guy, so I'm sure you speak to all ages. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And you can help me out with working things out with my grandchildren and the children and even young people who I meet in the street. So actually, you're out there making everybody relaxing everybody and making everybody feel good about themselves. But here is the thing. How do you get them to look forward to a better, richer, more accomplishments in the future?
Well, Joshua, you mentioned a few points, starting with grandchildren and how to relate to the elderly. So what I would say in that case, just taking note and paying attention closely to what you said, when you're talking about your grandkids, which I'm sure many grandparents can relate to, it's very hard, especially with that generational gap, for a grandparent to relate to a grandchildren. And with technology, and we're just in a modern age, it becomes much more difficult to understand one another. So what I do find is that grandparents, if they want to relate better with their grandchildren, I would say, which is key in leadership, any leader would have to take on this quality. And adults can understand this much better than children, that I would say step number one is to learn how to listen. When you listen to your grandchildren, they don't want to hear about certain things that happened perhaps in your past. Maybe if you were to approach them in a very subtle manner and speak to them in a very special way that they can understand and you can relate to them better, then they'll be more open to listening. But my point being, if you're a grandparent, it's very important to learn how to listen to your grandchildren. Because if you know how to listen, then they'll just go on and on and on and talk. So many adults these days try to instill their views, which are very traditional, maybe a little bit old-fashioned, so the child is automatically going to neglect what it is that the grandparent is saying. So I would say number one is just learn how to listen as a grandparent, and the grandchild will be a lot less reluctant to open up and relate to the grandparent as a result. Now, your second question was how to get, if I'm not mistaken, is how to get that spark back into your life as an elderly person and feel that sense of motivation. And what I would say to all the elderly out there is that it's very important to know that it is your birthright, it is your birthright to have that drive, to have that passion. You know, I wake up every morning and I just very consciously get myself into a state where I feel that like I connect with my heart and the purpose of why I was put on this planet. And I remind myself every day that the purpose of my life, God didn't put me here to put me behind a cubicle. He put me here to change the lives of many. So if every individual, adult, young, whatever age, you can relate to the same thing that I'm saying. All you have to do is connect with your purpose, connect to why you were put on this planet, and then it becomes a lot more easy to fall into that space of motivation, desire, drive. Just have that love for life, basically. So my goal as a motivational speaker, I know it's one thing to say it, but to act upon it is a little bit different. So my goal as a life coach and a motivational speaker is to instill that passion back into your life. Sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in life. And so we kind of forget, so to speak, why we were put on this planet. So my goal is to bring that fire, get you back to that birthright. The reason that you were put on this planet, I remind you of that, and I bring that passion back into your life.
Yeah, that's very important. Right now I'm going through several changes. A very good friend of mine told me that she doesn't want to be my friend anymore. It was a little my fault, but as you know, relationships are a two-way street, which is something I'm sure you stress. And I'd like to hear what you say about relationships being a two-way street. I know people can seem very convincing on their point of view, but in every disagreement, there are 2 points of view. And how do you highlight that and make that and discuss that with your audiences on mending relationships that are falling apart?
Well, I myself have gone into a lot of depth studying relationships and just why people think a certain way, what makes people do what they do, especially when it comes to men and women, friendships, work relationships. Really, our point of being on this planet, we were put on this planet to be in relationships with one another. We're communicative creatures. So to answer your question, it reminded me of a metaphor that I thought of one day. I remember driving in my car, and I was like, you know what, how can I kind of encompass what a relationship is? And I thought of this phrase, and it made so much sense at the time, and I thought that a relationship is similar to, you have to relate on a ship. When you're on a ship, you're two people on a ship together. There's going to be turbulence, but there's going to be times where the sea is at rest, and there is no turbulence, and you guys are getting along. But it's all about keeping afloat. The ship has to stay afloat, and you have to get from your destination, from point A to point B. So as long as you know how to keep the chemistry between two people, then you can have a healthy relationship. Now, also keep in mind that every relationship takes work. It takes effort. So it goes back to what I was saying before about knowing how to listen to one another, and also knowing that it requires a lot of compromise. When you can compromise in a relationship, then you can get along and you can listen to each other and understand what bothers the other person. Get over the fact that you need to be stubborn or you need to get your point across, and learn how to communicate and listen to one another's needs.
Well, I want to say one thing. We have a relationship here with Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And originally, when this program started, they were playing a very beautiful program with Professor Irwin Corey, who's a well-known comedian, and it was a tape, and I was terribly unhappy about it. But now, something wonderful has happened. They have caught up, and the facilitator got Ayala on the tape, which I'm very happy about. And you see her up there and so on. There she is. And I want to ask you one question, which is very important. I was discussing this with your father earlier today, who's observing the show in the studio, and we're happy to have him in his studio with your mother. And we were discussing the financial situation, the terrible economic turmoil that our society is going through. What impact does that have with the relationships, for instance, between young people and older people, where children have to live with their parents because apartments are so expensive? What impact does that have on the kind of work that you're trying to do, Ayala?
Well, I think okay, here's my personal story. You're talking about my generation and how we relate to our previous generation. And I think Generation Y is very much an experiential one. It's no longer go to school, get your degree, and have a 9-to-5 job. We're looking more for experience. We've gotten everything we've ever wanted handed to us on a silver platter. So what we need to do, what we kind of need more as a generation, is to feel something, some experience. Everything is so stimulated these days. Everything is thrown at us. We have advertisements coming at us from left to right with technology, with computers, television, cell phones. We're kind of losing touch with ourselves. So you asked what it is that I do and how I bring this into the workplace. This whole concept of relating between generational gaps is I try to get people my age per se to get more in touch with themselves. It's very important not to lose yourself in all the ruckus that happens around us, and we're all kind of, the reason we go to cell phones, technology, computers, television, it's kind of an escape. It's an escape from reality. So the purpose of all this technology is just, it's almost overbearing to say that, not that it's overbearing, but it's very important, just to go back to the main point, to be in touch with yourself. To really, my point, what I do with my clients is I get them to really focus in on what they're feeling and give them a very, very intense experiential experience for them to realize that reality isn't all just a stimulated reality. And so how, you were asking how I incorporate this into my work life. Well, I think when I graduated NYU, I graduated with a media culture and communications degree. And so my ultimate goal, or so I thought at the time, was to work for one of the big television stations, CNN, ABC, NBC, to be on camera ultimately. And then I remember one day as I was going to send out my resume and my cover letter, I was walking to the post office and something just stopped me. I felt almost like this gush of wind hold me back, and I had this like epiphany that this is not for you. This is not what you were meant to do. You were meant to change lives, but in a very different way. That wasn't my ultimate purpose. My purpose was, and I realize this is also an experiential thing, because when I help others, as a result, I'm experiencing the most immense amount of pleasure, which is ultimately why I think we've all been put on this earth, is to help one another, whether it's through working as whatever industry you're working in, as a graphic designer, whether you're a real estate developer, whether you're a life coach or a motivational speaker, ultimately your goal is to give back to society as a human being. So I think whether you're young or old, if you're doing something where you're giving back, then you feel a sense of fulfillment ultimately.
Yes. See, there is as you watch this show live, Ayala, there is a 9-second delay. So that's why you see us a little later. What I want to say is what Ayala is going to do is she's going to become a part of Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And she's going to have some live seminars down in our open studio. And she's going to utilize this facility to help you. And this facility, I don't know if you know it, Manhattan Neighborhood Network broadcasts all over the world. So you can even watch it in Israel when you go to the internet. You can watch it. So Ayala is going to be all over the world when she gets the hang of this place and so on. And talking about the hang of things, tell us a little more here. I pay admission to hear you speak. And what sort of, when you present your presentations, how are they like? What do you say? How do you open up? How do you continue? And how do you end those seminars?
I would say the key word is I open up with energy, I continue with energy, and I close with energy. If you have no energy, you have nothing. You can be on a stage. What I've noticed is sometimes when I get on a stage, I give certain statistics. And I've had people in the audience come to me after my presentation, and they'll tell me, you know, you could have said a statistic of 1 million people or a statistic of 10 people, and we would have believed you just because of the passion and the energy that you exude on that stage. So as long as you, and my whole, when I get up on that stage and I'm motivating people, I make them realize, and this is for all of you watching today as well, my goal is to have you realize that your time is now. And this time on this planet is crucial. It's like a ticking, it's like putting a cake in the oven. You know what I mean? You are that cake in the oven, and as it's getting ready, each second that goes by, that is life passing you by. So it's really important to know that if there's something that you need to take on in your life, the time is now, and it is your birthright. Your birthright. Why you were put on this planet was to fulfill whatever it is that your purpose that was given to you within this time frame that you're here. We're here for a very short time, so it's important to make a difference. I just, you know, I walk around Manhattan every day, and the sad part is I look into the eyes of some of the people walking by, and certain people look dead to me. They might not be legally dead, but what's the difference if they're walking around with no passion in their lives? That's not the purpose of our existence. It's not to walk around with that blank, cold look on in our faces. You know, the life has to be brought back into us. So that is what I do when I'm on stage. I kind of feel out the energy in the room, and I get the audience very much involved in what I do. I ask a lot of questions. I make them feel like they're a part of it, and I let everyone in the audience know that ultimately I'm their friend and I'm here to help them. So if I know that I can influence just one person in the audience, if I can influence more, unbelievable. But if I can influence one person, then I know that one person will have a domino effect, and ultimately I've achieved my goal.
That's very, very true. Very true. You can tell an awful lot by people's facial appearance and facial expressions. In fact, I'll tell you, I'm not a fortune teller and so on, but sometimes I've looked in the faces of some people and I've been able to detect that they have trouble in their life. I can tell that they have stress in their life. And here is something that happens to many of us. We sometimes look into a face of an elderly person and we see that their health is very bad. And if they don't take care of themselves, they shortly are going to make their transition. And I know this is true because I've been too polite to tell that to certain individuals. And a few weeks or a few months later, they passed away. It's very important to pay attention to the appearance and the facial expressions of people. How do you handle it when you're confronted by a friend or a client who's in trouble? How do you deal with it? Maybe you can give us some advice on that, Ayala.
Well, I would say, I mean, trouble is a very broad word. I mean, you started off by saying that, you know, you look into the faces of some people and you realize that their time left is short. So I would console that person with whatever time they have left, or maybe even just console their family or their loved ones, to kind of try to shift their perspective on the concept of death. Now, that's a very heavy topic. I won't go too far into it. But I remember just thinking of this one metaphor about what death is as I was just sitting outside in my backyard one day and I was looking at a tree and I saw a leaf fall off a tree. And to me, that leaf symbolized the essence of death. You know, the leaf was just kind of floating very elegantly in the wind as it came and just fell from the tree and hit the ground. And I remember just thinking to myself, you know, why can't death be something just peaceful? Why can't we look at it as, you know, we had our time on this earth and we lived it hopefully to our fullest capacity, you know, to our greatest potential. And then we just die a very peaceful and eloquent death. It doesn't have to be something that requires so much negativity. There's so much negativity just even talking about death. You know, that's just it's just not a comfortable thing to discuss, especially in a group setting. So I think if just we were to change the perspective of what death is, then people wouldn't take it so heavily. So I would also just console people and just to try to change their perspective. So if that's what you mean by trouble, then that's how I would kind of handle that. It's just I like to shift people's perspectives on many things on a wide scale.
Okay, this is a society of quick fixes. And if you want to give somebody a quick fix, you find somebody depressed, unhappy, maybe you've just met them 3-5 minutes ago, and you know by your life experience and your judgment that these people have real problems, and you want to give them a quick fix, and you want to make a difference in their lives. What do you do, Ayala, real quickly? How do you give them emotional first aid, as we will classify it?
Well, Joshua, as much as I'd love to say there is that magic bullet, unfortunately, it doesn't exist. You see that with people who are trying to lose weight when they go to the gym. They feel like after one workout, they're going to be a changed person. They're fed all of this, you know, illusion. You know, you see advertisements on get these magic abs, buy this machine. In 6 weeks, you'll have magic abs. And lo and behold, they order the machine. And after a week, it's in the basement. They never use it again. So one thing that I did hear, which reminded me regarding your question, I was reminded of it, is I heard someone say once, the shortest distance between 2 points, no, sorry, I got that. Okay, so what they said, the distance between 2 points is, the furthest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. I had to go back into my memory for a second, is a shortcut, but shortcuts don't work. And then I had a very wise man once tell me that the longest distance between any 2 points is between the head and the heart. So my advice to you is, if you want to really, really solve any problem in your life, it's not about finding that magic bullet. It's not about trying to squeeze through that shortcut. It's about really connecting between the head and the heart. When you can realize that the only point between two distances is ultimately between the head and the heart, and you connect those two, then your emotions are there, your mind is there, then you are there. You are present, and you can overcome any trouble that you have in your life, ultimately.
Well, I want to say one thing. You're a beautiful speaker and a beautiful lady, and you come. Were you born in Israel, or were you born in New York?
I was born in New York, but I've been to Israel many times. It's actually my favorite place in the world. I went to college before going to NYU. I took a year right after high school. You know, it was just, I felt this drive. My senior year of high school, I went to Israel for my youngest brother's bar mitzvah. And I remember just falling in love with the country all over again. Even though I had been to Israel prior, there was something, I guess it was just from an older perspective, there was something about the country that was very mystical and very magical, and just the culture in general, the people. I went there and I really felt like I was home, you know, and everyone ultimately wants to feel like they're home. So even though I'm born here and I was raised here, I mean, my heart is always in Jerusalem, ultimately.
I want to ask you, do you find that the Jewish experience and the magnitude of everything that Jewish people have accomplished really helps you in your work and mission?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that Judaism is my lifeblood. It doesn't have to be everybody's lifeblood, but that is my lifeblood, and that is what someone asked me once, like, how do you keep so, they like to call it hakuna matata. They say you're always hakuna matata. You have no worries. You're always very zen, very peaceful. You know, you don't get mad, you don't get agitated. And they say, how do you do it? And I have to give 100% credit to everything that I've learned in the Jewish tradition, in the Torah, through my rabbis, through Kabbalah, just studying in Israel, going to Tzfat, which is the home of Kabbalah, and just being in that environment. It just kind of infuses you with like this, the bigger reality, the bigger picture. You realize that life doesn't have to be about the little tiny arguments and misfits and things that bother us so often. Life's not about that. There's an ultimately there's a bigger purpose for us, something grander on a large scale. So and Judaism has really helped me tap into that and really helped me get in touch with myself and with my essence.
Okay, here's a tough question. How close are you to the top of the mountain?
Well, I say everyone has room to grow. Everyone has room to grow. I see it as kind of like a lid on a can, right? Or on a container. Everyone is at a different place. For me, you know, maybe the mountain is this big, and it's all relative to the individual. You can't say, you know, maybe I'm on this part of the mountain and someone else is on this part of the mountain. It doesn't mean I've achieved my goal. Maybe my goal is up here. But also it's very relative to the individual, because when I look at myself and I look at the next person, I know that they have years of experience that I've never experienced. So what I would say to answer your question is, I can never really judge a person until I've walked a day in their shoes. So to say how close am I to my goal, I mean, it's very relative. It's something that, you know, it's very personal to me, and to everyone else it'll mean something different. So it's very hard to answer that specifically, because that's a very abstract concept. But I would say as long as you're constantly striving towards the goal, then you're on the right track. You know, I mean, then you're alive. If you're going backwards, then you're not living. As long as you're going forwards towards your goal, then you're on the right track.
Well, I watched many of your tapes, and I want to ask you in the last few minutes of our show, how do you open up right now? You know, a seminar.
How do I open up a seminar? I get on the stage, like I said, with a lot of energy, and I say, good morning, beautiful people. Good morning, beautiful people. And I just make everyone feel like they are able to connect with me. You know, just raise the energy in the room, make everyone feel like they are a spark of God, a spark of potential, a spark of creativity. Everyone that is watching right now, you have so much potential inside you, so much just waiting to just explode, to burst. You know, just don't live your life overworked, underpaid. Don't live your life kind of just in this repetition, you know, just every day is a new day. Wake up to that new day and just tell yourself, you know, I am unlimited potential. And that's how I would ultimately open up.
Okay, I want to say we're on YouTube now. We're not on the air, but we're on YouTube. So when I get Professor Channer to put this on YouTube, where you can watch it forever and see it all over the world, whatever you're saying now is all going to be broadcast on YouTube. And Professor Channer has unlimited YouTube, and he'll probably also show you how to get unlimited YouTube. You know, there's a rumor that you only get 10 or 15 minutes. That's not true. If you know what you're doing, you get as much time as you need. So I hope you come down here and do your thing. When you come down here, what are your plans, and what do you think your itinerary is going to be?
What is my itinerary going to be? Oh, when I come here, my itinerary is going to be to first start by motivating the crew here. You know what I mean? Get everyone on the same page. If I can motivate and uplift and change the energy of this environment here, you know, I started with myself. I've conquered myself. So if I can conquer and just change a little bit the energy of the place, then we can expand outwards and start taking over the world, but in a positive way. Just spread the positive energy, spread the light.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of have had experiences, and as I say, I'm an intuitive person, and I know the kind of parents and background you have, and in every culture, parents are a leader, but especially, I guess, in our culture, parents have more of a leadership ability and are more domineering and so on, and yet you seem to not only have worked it out, but you have determined who you are and what you want to be. And you think that people who come to listen to you at your seminars can also determine who they are and what they want to be and where they want to go?
I mean, absolutely, Joshua. I think when everyone gets in touch with themselves, and I think that's something that I struggled with for a good 5 years of my life. I lost a friend of mine in a motorcycle accident about 4 or 5 years ago, and before that, I was a different person. You know, so my message to you is that if I can do it, anyone can do it. You know, I went from being very materialistic, very about myself, not even in touch with myself. I was all about the external pleasures. You know, I wanted a nice car, I wanted nice things, I wanted vacations. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I think that to answer your question, it's just when my friend died, she was my age, so it was a huge wake-up call for me. You know, I realized at the time I was 21, now I'm about to be 25, and I realized that for 21 years of my life I was alive, but I wasn't living. You know, so for me it was very, very important for me to start, and I started with really getting in touch with myself, really getting to know myself. You know, we all try to attach identities onto us, whether it's religion, whether it's societal, whether it's in front of our friends, in front of family. Life is a performance. We're constantly acting different in front of our parents versus in front of a teacher, per se. You know, so it's when you can get back to your center, get back to your core. And it takes some practice, and it takes a lot of introspection. But that's what I do with my clients on a daily basis, is that I get them in touch with themselves, so that way they can realize what their true passion in life is and then actualize it and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's... And I'm so glad that we're running your name and your contact information, your website on the internet and YouTube, and we're going to hope that that's going to get you a lot of things. You know, when we look through the newspapers nowadays, we see an awful lot of trouble. And a guy like me looks through the newspapers and says, whatever happened to our America? So how do you leave what you see in the New York Post and the daily news behind and live the kind of life you deserve and that you should leave. How do you leave the negative energy behind? Can you give us an exercise in that?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, I think you have it's a very good point that you're bringing up about, there's just so much terror going on in the newspapers and on the news in general that we've kind of almost become numb to it. We hear in the Middle East what's going on between the Arab-Israeli conflict. One soldier dies, one bomb goes off, and we hear it, and so many people, it's unfortunate to say, but they're very numb to it. They're very numb to it. So, I mean, I would say that meditation has really changed my life when it comes to getting in touch with just humanity on a global scale. And what I'll do is, a lot of the time when I sit in my meditation, which I do on a daily basis, by the way, is I will focus on my heart center, and I will feel this tremendous energy, this tremendous feeling of love start at my heart center, and I'll just begin to focus it. I mean, an energy is a very tangible thing. Everything is energy, whether you can see it or not.
Ayala, thank you so much, and we hope to see you in the future. Paul DiRienzo is at the door, and we're going to let him in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can let Paul.
Very good. Unbelievable.
Paul DiRienzo was on radio for many years.
You
You can open the door.
Very good, very smart.